Hello again. How do people keep finding their way over here? Anyway, me again with a Thaumcraft tutorial. This one is again aimed at people like ZombieCleo, who ideally have some prior experience with Thaumcraft. It has changed quite a bit in more recent versions, however, so this is going to be a very interesting thing. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this wispy essence and I'm going to chuck it into this portal. You may notice I'm still intact. That's because I'm running the most recent version of Direwolf 20, the version 5.0.1. Thank you, Jeeves. Which has fixed the MystCraft crashing bug. I don't know if this is what the working draft server is running on, but that's how we're going. And just to prove that that actually went through the nether, because I've got a loader over there. Boom, there it is. And conveniently it lands right next to our first selection of the day. So, the initial and vital recipes that you need to know. This one is probably the most important. This is the Wand of the Apprentice. This is the smallest and like most all-purpose kind of one that you'll ever find. It basically serves as a battery. That's how this as well works, and you can see it even has a little HUD now. That's a more recent addition, which shows how much Viz it's got, and I'm not 100% sure on what the minus 4% is. I don't particularly know, but I believe you can enchant these to have special effects, such as potency and whatnot, but we'll get onto that in a moment. So, your first one, Wand of the Apprentice, it holds 50 Viz. This is the maximum tier 1, it holds 1000. Wand of the Thaumaturge. Next, tables. Apparently you have to have some degree of interior decoration ability to be a wizard, but tables. Just 2 blanks, 3 wood and 3 slabs, and you get a table. You're going to need 3 of these to start out. And scribing tools. Feather, potion bottle, ink sac. Scribing tools. Now, this is where things get a little bit odd. Firstly, you're going to take your scribing tools, you're going to take 2 tables side by side like this, and you're going to right click. And this gets you a research table. More on that in a moment. Then, you're going to take your wand, you're going to take another table, and you're going to right-click that. And that creates an arcane work table, which, as you can see, has an inventory for a wand, as well as a number of things. It sort of functions like a project table in that regard, in that you can just leave stuff in it and walk away for a bit. And then we've got this, which is the cauldron, which doesn't see much use inside of standard Minecraft, because why not just use a water source? But, Shazam! And we have a crucible. As you can see there, my wand is recharging, but I'll get to that again in a moment. And this is the part where you can kind of skip finding out most of this after you find out about the wand, which is bookcase. Ta-da! We have a Thaumonomicon, and this is where I start to explain things a bit more. See, Thaumcraft functions on a sort of achievement scale, which is you start off with a number of things unlocked, namely this kind of area around here, and you can click on them and it gives you details. So this is the crucible that I just showed you. The crucible needs water in it, and it needs a heat source such as fire. Fire on Netherrack is especially popular, but lava will work as well. And you go through them, and as you research things on the table, you get to discoveries, and you right-click those in your inventory to unlock them in here, so that you can actually create them, because whilst the table and the scribing tools and the wand are, the Wand of the Apprentice at least, are fully available inside of like not enough items and such, everything else you do not know how to craft. And if you attempt to craft it, it will fail. It will not even allow you to complete it. So, on to how this all works. I've got goggles of revealing here, which just let me see the levels of Viz, that's the A on the side there, and the F is our level of flux. I'll describe that in a moment. But then we have this big glowy thing over here. This is an aura node. Aura nodes store Viz, and they basically are spread out across the world. You'll find them, very small ones, inside of silverwood trees, and they do appear, and those nodes do appear there when the silverwood tree grows. If they get close enough, they'll fuse together, which creates a lot of flux, but then it also creates a node that's bigger. So you can see I've got this strange 291 node here. That's because I've combined 3 of them to get this, and I'll show you how to do that in a bit. We also have some crystals down here. These ones are all artificial, but if you find some very glowy, sparkly rocks, that will be infused stone, and they will drop some of these smaller shards. Those are sort of a mechanism for the aura nodes to recharge, but they're also a very useful component in a lot of things. And if you have an extremely high level of Viz in the area, then apparently some pieces of stone will spontaneously turn into infused stone with the little crystals inside. I can't confirm this because I've never managed to get a node that high, and this one's supercharged by all these crystal clusters, but again, never on that. So, now that we know that much, and oh boy, was that a mouthful, let's hop over to our research table here. Now you can see I've already got some stuff in here. These are just some kind of condensed aspects. An aspect is a quality of an item, and that's what you'll have been seeing if you held shift while you're in your inventory with your mouse over an item. You see this wispy essence has some animus, formortuus, and a mutatio. And the Thaumcraft has different ones, the ones have different ones. Pretty much every single vanilla item does, as well as everything that Thaumcraft adds, and a few things from other mods. Rubber and sticky resin are among two that I'm aware of particularly. But you also have this section down here, which is furrow or cursory. Cursory has less of a chance to advance a researched theory, which pops up in here when you're looking at something. That's what you need the paper down here for. You need about a stack of it. Well, less than a stack, but a stack, why not? There are less than 64 researchers, that's why I've still got 9 down here. Furrow has a much higher chance of advancing it, but also a much higher chance of using up the item that you're looking at. So, for example, if I hit that, you'll see some of these numbers dropped, and that's because they got used up. The basic analogy is that cursory is you're just kind of giving it a once-over with your eye. Furrow, you're actually taking it apart and having a look inside, and you may not be able to put it back together afterwards. So you do that, and you go through all manner of items, and things will start to show up inside of this area here. Initially, you'll just have question marks. They'll be called obscurus. This means that you know that there is something there, but you don't actually know what aspect it is. And there are quite a few of these. If they have a glowy symbol over here, like the telum and the cognitio, that is because there is something in the local environment which is making you more likely to achieve studying that thing. If they grey out in the process of studying something, that means that the research table has figured out that they do not exist in the theory that you are researching as yet. And you just, of course, hit the magnifying glass to research it further. Once everything is maxed out at 100%, you will be able to turn your theory into a discovery, which you right-click in your hotbar. What will also appear is, in this upper left corner here, is a kind of scribbledy, oldie-looking paper. Initially, that will have absolute gobbledygook on it, but as you continue to research, it will turn into English and you'll be able to read it. That's very handy, along with the fact that a name pops up here once it exceeds the percentage for unknown theory. That's very handy for figuring out what else you need to put into the research table. So, for example, if something like the brain is involved, you probably need something like cognitio. But once you've gotten sufficiently high up, you will unlock this, which is the infusion altar. Now, the infusion altar lets you build things, like the arcane work table. In fact, you can use everything from the standard work table in the arcane work table, and the same again with the infusion altar, and it also has an inventory, hence I've got pieces here already. It needs the arcane work table and the infusion altar need a wand in them to draw viz for certain recipes. This one, for example, requires 46, as you can see just under here. And the infusion altar also allows you to infuse your creations with certain aspects. So this one's looking for Victus, Tudamen, Telum, and Animus. And quite a bit of all of them, in fact. But the infusion altar can draw them from nearby wooded jars, which is what these are. It can also draw them from nearby crucibles. Bearing in mind, if you try and make anything using the crucible, you have to toss it into it while it's boiling, which is when there's little bubble effects in the water in it. And if you pull them out, if you pull anything out of the infusion altar whilst there's something in the crucible that it's using, it will dump everything else into the atmosphere, creating flux. By now you're probably wondering what flux is. Well, When there is a high level of flux, you can see the flux level here is moderate, wisps will start spawning out of the ore nodes. They'll only spawn out of the nodes if they actually have a block there that's like they can spawn in. If you actually like encase it in rock, then they can't spawn at all. They're little annoying things that fly around erratically and shoot lightning at you, usually, and they're very annoying. Other things that happen when you have a very high flux is that wisps will spawn more commonly. There'll be negative status effects. The air around you will be suffused with strange energies, is what the chat will say. So you'll get things like mining fatigue and such. Random thunderstorms will happen. I've lost a fair few golems to that, and they'll have a lot of lightning in them. And then there's possibly the most maligned, which is a giant angry zombie. The angry zombies are the zombies with red eyes, they're the only ones that drop the zombie brains. The only real way to solve flux is to not use Viz in the area. If you have to use magic, go a significant distance away. Otherwise, try and avoid the area. But when there is flux in a node, it has this purplish lightning. You can only see the nodes if you have goggles, or really you can locate them using a thermometer, which is one of the first things you learn inside the tree. So that would be here. I need 2 of those to make that, that's really annoying. But you also get things like night ore, which I believe Cleo is familiar with, because she loved using it as lighting. Alumentum, which is a kind of grenade, for want of a better description. Thaumium, big important metal material. Transmutation, because what is a thaumaturge without the ability to create alchemy, apparently. Building blocks, you use those for a bunch of things. Enchanted fabric, that's where I get these spiffy robes. And I would explain more, but the main emphasis in Thaumcraft, of course, is to figure things out for yourself. Now, over here, around my infusion altar, I have water jars with every single one of the aspects in them. Which makes it very handy for building it. If you have them marked like here, golems can empty into them, which is very handy. There's quite a few, as you can see. I haven't quite filled out this top row, and this middle row here is empty completely. But there's a lot of them. Some of them are almost never ever used at present. That may be expanded in future updates, but others are very common. I believe this one's Victus. Yep, Victus is a fairly common one, at least when you're making golems. Machina and such are common. Metallum is useful. But how do you isolate them? How do you put them into these jars? Well, you need to get your hands on some of these. These are files. This is another recipe that you know from the outset, and it's just glass and clay. So I can show you that off. There you go. Glass and clay. You don't even need a wand for that, but you don't really have much reason to make it. But they're not much use until you get higher up, and you get to... Oop, not there. Here we are. Basic flux research. You get this, and if you can find some silverwood logs, then you can use the infusion altar to make arcane alembics. Now, what the arcane alembics do is they try to store an aspect that's not being used up, but that is being emptied out of a cauldron. You empty a cauldron by right-clicking it with your wand when it has stuff in it, I should mention. Otherwise, it just gets shoved into the atmosphere and becomes flux. Once it's in an alembic, you can right-click it with a file, and that will give you an Essentia file of that particular thing. So Essentia Lignum, Essentia Victus, Essentia Mortus, all sorts. And then you can right-click these guys, which will hold a stack of it, basically. An Essentia file holds 8, so this is 8 Essentia files worth of Gilus, I think that one is. And you can get these golems, which will man them for you. You can get... Well, the golems are my favourite part. They can do a whole bunch of things. So I've got some iron golems over here, which are going to attack any wisps that come out of this. It's a wooden golem that's going to grab any of the drops that it drops. We've got some tallow golems over here, or just manning the crucibles, so restocking them with water and emptying them of any essentia they happen to store. But that's actually mid-tier. So, mid-tier is stuff like this Wand of Lightning, or as I prefer to think of it, unlimited power! Which doesn't actually recharge unless you have a specific enchantment on it, so I'm not going to use that too much. But that actually have a fairly decent range. But speaking of the enchantments, if we come over here, I have an enchanting table set up. And the enchantments are very, very unpredictable, so I got a couple here already. Wand of Excavation here is used for mining, but I have Charging 1 and Potency free. Potency means it digs better, basically, and Charging 1 means that it will try to, unlike a normal usable wand, which is sort of the ones that have special abilities that you find in the second tier, it will gradually draw Viz from the surrounding environment and try to recharge itself. And I have this pickaxe, which has two enchantments we'll be familiar with, Silk Touch and Efficiency 4. It also has Repair 2, which means that it will use Viz from the atmosphere to try and repair itself slowly. So if you happen to have, say, your favorite enchanted diamond pick, which has like Efficiency 4 and Unbreaking 4 or whatever on it, repair on it as well, and it will actually start repairing itself. You'll never have to worry about it breaking ever again. But why do I have these here, and what is this weird thing that they're attached to? This is one of the most annoying things to get. This is an arcane boar, and it is a mining tool for the discerning alchemist. So it's got a base, which connects to a chest, and it's got this part up here, which we can whack with your wand to reorient. But it doesn't do much of anything right now. It's redstone triggered, but it doesn't actually have anything to use, because we need to right-click it, and we need to give it a Wand of Excavation, and we need to give it a pickaxe. You can give it any pickaxe, I'm just using this magic one anyway. And the one, whichever kind of wand and pickaxe you give it, it will actually add some qualities, so higher speed, bigger width, native clusters is a special quality, which is sort of like dropping dusts. Silk Touch comes from our enchanted pickaxe. And we can see it looks pretty boss, and if I flick this, it's going to set to work digging a roughly circular kind of area, and all the goodies it gets comes into here. We can see that's moving rather quickly. I'm just going to turn that off because it does draw quite a bit of Viz from the atmosphere. As you can see, we're now on minimal, and our 239 is down to less than 200. That's partially because of the boar running and partially because these are repairing themselves. And what do we have next over here? This is another one of the hardest ones to get. It requires a lot of crystals, and it requires a lot of research, and it also requires these totems. These are a brand new world generation feature inside of Thaumcraft, and you need 8 of them to make this. And what happens is, if I right-click this, you can see that we've got yet another aura node over there. If I right-click it, it will very, very slowly rise into the air, and it's going to destroy Alderaan. By which I mean it's actually going to shoot a laser at that node, and very, very gradually, and using up quite a bit of fizz, drag it to where it is. And it has this weird thing with where its hitbox renders, but eventually it's going to drag the aura node right there, and you can use that to drag nodes to specific locations, like your house, for example, although I don't know if I'd recommend that, given that that's where wisps spawn from. But you can also draw them together to try and actually just fuse them. And again, fusing, lots of flux, but you get a bigger node out of it. And you can also see little lighty pieces coming there. I'd zoom in, but Optifine hasn't been quite updated yet. That's coming from a distant node, and that node is trying to repair the node that's being dragged out here, which is dying right now. How appropriate. And when a node is dying, in an extreme case, it will try to revert infused stone to regular stone to gain more Viz, but we don't have any so on this particular world, so that's not going to happen. And that's more or less the only way that you can actually destroy an aura node. But that's been it, more or less, so I hope this has been informative. My personal recommendations are that you fill out the first tier of research, which is these. You need to get to this, which is extremely, extremely, extremely expensive. But the bulk of first tier is actually in here. You need a reasonably good supply of eggs, because that has permutatio in fairly high numbers. And it actually kind of helps quite a bit to have a MystCraft farm going, so things like cows and chickens and reeds, because those actually have some very useful aspects in the things that you can make from them. Once you get through to that, though, goggles of revealing let you see aura nodes. They also let you see the things that are in various water jars and crucibles. So if you toss, say, 2 coal into a crucible, you'll be able to see the exact volumes and such that are in there, which is kind of important for reducing flux wherever you can. And further down here, of course, we have the water jars, which are very handy for storing things, and flux research. I really cannot recommend flux research enough. It is very important if you want to, say, not have gigantic lightning storms killing all of your people. But other than that, I'd recommend the golems, because I love the golems. They're awesome. And I love that we've now got this tier 3 golem, which allows me to make a golem that wanders around attacking things. But that's something for you to find out, and a few of these things, you'll notice, are a different colour. These are things that you cannot normally get. That is to say that if you try and research them in a research table with just paper, then you will find nothing. You need to find knowledge fragments, which you can find in dungeons, especially Thaumcraft dungeons. You can also go into NPC villagers and find wizard testificates, who you can trade things for to get the knowledge fragments. You need about 54 of them, I think. 53. It's 9 of them per unknown theory, and you need 1 unknown theory per each of these. So 7 of them, so 63. Okay, so that has been this video. I shall strip down to my maid outfit. If you don't know why I'm wearing a maid outfit, then I advise you hop over to my main channel, Remember Comic, or click on the link at the very end of this video, because I'm having a charity drive to try and get a decent recording computer, which involves, if we get the numbers high enough, me wearing an actual maid outfit on camera. But that's if we get high enough. So, if you want to see me degrade myself on camera, then by all means donate to that. Meanwhile, back to Cleo and Working Draft. Bye bye. Curtsy.